it's hard to develop at least the human intelligence skills to reliably go into an unknown place and come back with something. Like in Bosnia, we were the first people to be there. I mean, okay, the UN had been there, but it was a bunch of Pakistani guys, and they were mostly just holding ground, right? They weren't operating outside the camp. So, and sure, we trained, to be able to go out and meet people and have conversations. But the reality is we largely didn't know what we were getting into, because our mission was part strategic, part tactical until we deployed. And then it was all tactical and all like unknown unknowns. And so we had to go experience it. And it's a tough road to figure out, like, if your team is allowed to go off to camp, if your leadership is good at mentoring you and everything else, now you have the chance to maybe develop into somebody who can collect. We take these skills and apply them in day-to-day life. And sometimes, my ability to control conversation, right? When I was a younger collector, I couldn't control my desire to find things out from my friends, my family. Like I would get into a conversation and find out that I was just wrenching, until I became more sophisticated in that collection. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I remember learning how to do some of that stuff. They called it a Jason Bourne school. And I remember learning that and thinking every area of my life is now going to benefit. And that stuff trickled in very overtly, I guess, is how I would describe it. It was very overt, but at the same time, I wanted to hone those skills. I wanted to get the reps in when the stakes weren't high. So when the stakes were high, it was kind of it became more automatic for me.
What does that look like, though? Like in the day-to-day operation, how do you get those reps in, and what do they look like?
So let's just take elicitation, for example. Elicitation skills are basically, to sum it up, how to get information out of a person without asking questions, because questions are difficult. So let's say, and I'll be probably preaching to the choir, but let's say, Pete, I take you to a grocery store, and let's say we're standing in the produce section of a grocery store, and I say, Pete, you've got 2.5 minutes to figure out how much that woman makes over there, who's stocking the cauliflower, but you can't ask her how much she makes for a living. So the question is not possible. So we have to use statements to get information. And it makes people way more open to giving information out when you use statements. So if you just walked over there and said, hey, how much do you make for a living? You might still get the answer, but you're going to be put in a column on her little mental Excel sheet of weirdo or potentially socially awkward, and the relationship may not develop. But if you went over there and said, hey, congratulations, I just read online that you guys got bumped up to $17.50 an hour. That's fantastic. And then if you just say that and she turns around and goes, what? No, we only make $14.25. Now you have the income because she wanted to correct you. We triggered that need. And then you can say, oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry. I must have read the wrong article or something on LinkedIn. So just, I would say small things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. The craft of not asking for what you want, and then also being able to let the conversation go to where it needs to go, because you might find out instead of how much she makes a year or an hour or whatever it is, she may give you something even better. And so You can't be so fixated on that one piece of information that you close all the doors to the other thing. Like, it's all about, when I try to explain, it's about trust and openness. And you have to know that you can ride on this wild pony and guide it to where it needs to go, and realize this is all I needed right here. Let's not work this anymore. Done. I've got my piece of gold. I've got that piece of trust, or whatever it is. So you're right. And the elicitation thing, and I know you'll get this, so this is more for the audience, but I want to talk about this, is we think about questions in open and closed, and that's a decent way to do it. But basic interrogatives are closed questions. It's so when you remove that interrogative from the first part of the question. So like if I was to say, what's your opinion on that? Okay, that's a pretty good question. But if I just said, opinions, and then you're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah. And you're going to think deeper than that, And so, one of my favorite questions was to ask Shunu Rayak in Arabic, what is your opinion about this? And you ask someone who hasn't been asked their opinion on something, someone from America who they're like, man, I revere who you guys are and what you're doing. They're going to dig deep and give you a lot. And then once they give that stuff to you, part of the elicitation is just don't waste it.
Yeah.
Listen for what they're saying and find those areas to pull that lever and get to work in that one little aspect.
Yeah. So true. And that's one, I mean, you could even use elicitation in that, where you would use a statement that's provocative. You would say something like, I bet you've got some really well-founded opinions on that.
Yeah.
So the I bet statement is kind of my go-to when it comes to elicitation.
Yeah. Yeah. Another question, and it's got the interrogative in it, but I think it's all right, is, what keeps you up at night? Because that's a heavy question. And that puts that person in their bed at night and they're like, oh, you know what, actually. And it's never what you think it's going to be.
Right.
Because everybody has that. Everybody has something. And you're looking for these things that are just like automatic answer buttons where they can't help themselves. Like someone who's from Ohio State, like, you go down with those guys, kind of a weak program. You guys are kind of overhyped. And then they'll just vomit and they won't stop vomiting, and you can say, I'm going to do this to you, push the button, and they still are compelled to respond to these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. It's such a societal thing to where tribal defense and societal social responses are just pre-programmed into our automatic behaviors that we can't, it's really difficult to stop.
Yeah. The stopping part is great. So just for the audience, one of the tricks that I would do, and Chase, hit the ball back and ask me or expand on this, but if I go to someone's office, I am going to take a moment to be aware of what's in their office, because there's going to be something in there that is so important that they will respond to it. And just from doing prep for you, the first thing I noticed was there's always a picture of your dog above your head, and I'm like, all right, so I can ask about this dog, and you're going to have an emotional response before you give me the answer.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you do? Like, what do you look for that will find those levers that are just compelling to the point where the person doesn't even care if when sometimes you're over talking and you're like, I'm over talking, but I don't care. I have to talk. Like, what are those things for you?
Anything that I think is what they are specific. What is in the space, a person's car, office, person, clothing they're wearing. What's in the space that looks like or has the appearance of being designed for you to see? So if I see somebody's, let's say some weirdo has a picture of a dog above his head in every video that he's in,
Yeah.
you might say something like, I bet there's a really interesting story behind that photo. And that goes back to the I bet statement. So if I see somebody who's over the age of 25 still wearing a college graduation ring, you damn right they want to be asked about it. They want to talk about it. They want you to see those things.
Yeah.
So any part of somebody's environment or makeup that is there, that either they're very proud of or they would like to be seen as a certain type of person. What do you think? What do you typically look for?
Me, what do I look for? I'll look for a book, because a lot of time, because of the shows we've had so many authors, there's often a book that someone has written that I'll know. Either I've read it or I've met the author through the show. I find that to be just so sticky that we're off to the races and we're fast friends. It's a fast friend maker. And I don't even look anymore. Once I see that book, done. All the other work goes out, and I can really just focus on them. And I'm looking at I call it fence building. And so I'm like, wait, you were in the Army? I was in the Army, or you like the Dodgers? I like the Dodgers. You're trying to put these fence poles, and you're like, hey, we have the same kind of fence. Let's keep seeing if these things touch. And so I just start fence building with these guys and try to understand, like, hey, were you're an Afghan governor. Surely you were in the Mooj. And then they're like, yeah, I was in the Mujahideen. I was a commander. Well, then done right there. I'm done. I'm going to just talk about that time so I can understand their hardship, their warrior spirit. I mean, dude, something like that, Chase, it's over.
Yeah, it's very true. And it's an automatic bond. It goes from, I'm not sure who this person is, to this person is a member of my tribe. Very quickly. So that those tribal affiliations are pre-programmed in our ancestors. And that's literally what kept us alive for the last 5 million years. And you can't LinkedIn course your way out of something like that. There's no like meditating your way out of the last 5 million years of what kept our ancestors alive.
Right.
So that's why that stuff is so powerful. It's built into our DNA. We're not even born with the ability to speak language, but we're born with all that tribal stuff. We're born with body language and nonverbal communication. That's why it's so reliable.